my name is Justin, and today I'm going to be talking to you about changing the front brake pads on a vehicle. The first step to do is to go out and buy yourself some nice brake pads. I prefer Napa brakes because they're quite the trusted name. Well, this afternoon I went out and I bought these brakes. They're fairly easy if you know what year and make and model your vehicle is. Today I bought them for a 1990 Chevy half-ton. These ran at about $35. Man, that's no good. Oh, hi there again. Still Justin here. Well, now that the vehicle's all jacked up in the front, and you're just about ready to take the wheels off the chassis, there's one final safety precaution I like to make. I like to put a solid jack stand under each side of the frame, because I personally do not trust hydraulic lifts. There's too many moving parts that can fail, and you never know when it'll come apart. So cameraman, if you want to come and see where I'm positioning this, I like to put it right on a strong point of the frame. That way I know that it's not going to fall on my hands or cripple me, or even worse. Alright, now that we have the jack stands placed properly under the vehicle, I can begin to take the wheel off, thus gaining access to the calipers and the worn brake pads. I have nice wheels on this truck, so I like to use lock nuts. There's one lock nut per wheel, and basically it's its own little key to get in. That way, if you have nice wheels, thieves have a harder time getting at them. So you take the lock nut bit that comes with the lock nuts when you buy them, and you place it over the lock nut, and you make it finger tight, finger loose. From there, continue to remove that. Now that almost all the nuts are off the wheel, we'll soon be able to get out to the caliper, and we'll be able to see where all this sound is coming from. Alright. With the wheel removed, you can see the brake disc, the hub, and the caliper. The caliper houses the worn out brake pads, which we're going to attempt to change today. A little fact about brake calipers is that they specially have a hook mounted on them, that when your brake pads get too low and they wear into the disc, this hook will start to grip the disc and send off a high-pitched squeal every time you apply braking pressure. Typically, once this squealing begins, you'll have 2 to 3 weeks to change your brake pads. If you don't change them within those 2 to 3 weeks, you'll have about $200 to $800 damage done to the calipers and the rotors and everything else in the brakes. Now that the wheel's been removed and the rotor's been tilted to the side for easy access to the 2 bolts holding the caliper together, we need to remove the 2 bolts. Start off with the bottom one, and then the top one. Then the caliper can be pulled off, and we'll be able to insert the new brake pads. Once the 2 bolts on the back of the caliper are loose, it should come off with ease. But this vehicle is in such need of a new brake job that we needed to use a rubber hammer as to not warp any of the steel. Now what we're doing is removing the worn brake pad from the piston side, which is the side that applies pressure. You first got to get the clip out of the cylinder, and then you got to pull the 2 prongs from underneath out. Here's the old brake pad. Lining it up with the new pad, you can see that's fairly worn. I'd say that it was in good need of a change. Now we have to move the brake pad that isn't under pressure. We have to take it off because it also needs replacing. So I used a screwdriver to loosen these 2 bracket points. Therefore, it comes out with a lot more ease than it would if it was still factory tight. Once again, here's the old versus the new, and that pad was in great need of change. Now that the calipers have no pads on them whatsoever, you need to do something about that. What we're going to do is we're going to replace those old pads with the new ones. you gotta clip them the same position as the other brakes were in order for them to work effectively. I just like to make sure they're secure, tapping them all over, and making sure they fit into each and every hole the way they were specifically designed to. Otherwise, you might have foul brakes. And this is quite the safety feature on vehicles. It's not something to toy with. Now that the base brake pad is in there properly, we now have to put in the pressurized one. Start by aligning these two prongs at the bottom hole here. It's the perfect width if you get the right pads. You have to insert it in there gently as not to break these aligning prongs that go into the cylinder and hold it steady. A good way to know when you're all the way in is that these two lines, the center here, will somewhat line up. Now, apply even force to the brake pad. Sometimes work it in there with your fingers, and you can insert the pad into the cylinder. Sometimes tools are needed. And there you have it. 2 brand new brake pads on an old brake system. Now that you've removed the worn pads and you've made sure that the new pads will fit properly, it's a good idea to reset the piston. Without resetting the piston, the brake caliper will still be set for these worn brake pads and it will not properly fit onto the disc. So I've used this C-clamp here to push the piston back into its hold. And now I can remove this C-clamp and put my new brake pads back in. Now that the piston's reset and the new pads are placed securely back into the caliper, we can align the brake pads and the brake disc. Now, with a little bit of force, be able to properly match everything up. Just make sure it's all in there nice and good. And there you go. Now, they're going to sound grindy for a little bit, but that's just because these new brake pads will be grabby. Now that the caliper is properly aligned, you're going to have to align these 2 bolts properly with the holes. That will include a little bit of fidgeting with the caliper on the rotor, but it's easily achieved. Next, you want to tighten these so that it's mounted properly. Once you have the caliper securely fitted against the rotor again, it's a good idea to straighten the front steering. It's not implying that vehicles have rear steering, but some do. Now that the brakes are fastened securely, we have to put the wheel back on to make this brake change complete. With the vehicle still on the jacks, put the nuts onto the posts, thus securing the wheel to the hub. Once you have all the nuts onto the posts, it's a good idea to tighten them in a specific pattern. Start with the lock nut if you have one, and work your way directly across, diagonally down, so that you tighten across constantly. That way it'll even the pressure and you won't have a misaligned wheel. Now that the brakes have been properly replaced, we have to get the vehicle off the jack stand. Use the jack that we lifted the vehicle with and lift the chassis off of the 2 structural supports that place under it. Once these 2 jack stands are removed, the vehicle will be free to the ground. You will be able to test your new brakes. You've just successfully changed the brakes on your vehicle. Well, folks, that's how you change the front brakes on a vehicle. Front brakes on vehicles are generally disc brakes, which have the pads and which are what we learned about today. Most vehicles will have front and back disc brakes if they're a newer model, but some of the older model vehicles have drum brakes, which require you to remove a drum and then pull the two pads out from inside. That's a completely different process. Well, I hope I've been a help to you. I know I've been a help to myself today. You've just been J-boned.
Salvo Auto Parts.